Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask an Assistant, the podcast for executive assistants and the people that love us. I'm your host, Jess Lindgren. Let's get to work. Today's topic is more of a theme than a question, but for anyone with a question out there listening, I would invite you to write in via askanassistant.com at any point in time. I am here to help. And I really need you to believe me when I say the only stupid question is the question that you don't ask. So, on to the matter at hand. This is another installment in the importance of language, series? Sporadic series, limited series, whatever you want to call it. Sure. Today we're talking about the importance of language. Be specific, my goodness. I'm going to cover three topics about specificity with language today, which are things that I have encountered quite frequently over the last couple of weeks, honestly, which really spurred my desire to record this episode. And those are going to be being specific with time zones, with full names, and what constitutes the first whatever day of week in any given month. In my example today, I am going to use Thursday, as that was the example that I was personally dealing with. So just start thinking about what constitutes the first Thursday of any given month when you're scheduling a recurring series of events. So without further ado, let's dive in. Time zones. It is, for whatever reason, it is super frustrating to me when people abbreviate time zones as PT instead of Pacific time, MT instead of Mountain time, CT instead of Central time, ET instead of Eastern time. Like, for whatever reason, it really bothers me when people don't just type out Pacific, Mountain, Central, Eastern, what have you. I can't explain it, but it does. It bothers me. And I spend a lot of time offering dates and times to people, and I do one of two things. Either when I'm messaging internal folks via Slack or I'm emailing external people, I either, list out here's date, time, day of week, very much getting as specific as possible. But I will either copy the phrase Pacific time so that I can just paste it onto the end of every time offer, So if I say Thursday, October 31st, 10 a.m. Pacific time, or I will state at the beginning, like in bold, underline it, quote, all times offered below are in the Pacific time zone for 15, 30, 45, 60 minutes, what have you. Yeah, I'm fortunate and unfortunate that my executive has a pretty we kind of a Tetrisy calendar, if you will. We don't do a lot of time blocking. We're not people who, okay, every Tuesday is podcast recording day, that kind of thing. He definitely has some things that happen regularly every week, every month. But a lot of stuff is just when does it fit in around all of the rest of the commitments on the calendar. So I still do a lot of manual offering of times and scheduling subsequently. But I like it because then I'm not managing the external third party calendar service quite so much. I'm not relying on automations that can sometimes fail. So a bit of a double-edged sword there, but I do always take the time to say date, day of week, day of week, date, time, number of minutes, time zone. It just, for whatever reason, it is super frustrating also to me when somebody just says Central Time, meaning the United States Central Time, when there are often Central European time zone folks in the mix. Um, I suppose that one's a pretty specific annoyance, because I think for a lot of us, we do have our preferred chunk of time zones that we work within. Maybe you're based in Europe and you work with a lot of people in Europe, Great Britain, and surrounding time zones. I don't know what the time zone is off the top of my head. That's 1 hour ahead, 1 hour later, rather than Central European. But I'm sure you have a little chunk of like, these are the local people we work with, or these are the people that we regularly interface with. Um, but yeah, I feel like it's worth it to just take a moment. say what actual time zone are we working within here? Be specific. And then I also get super frustrated here in the United States when someone says mountain time, and then I later run into the issue, especially with daylight savings time around the corner this weekend for us. I know a lot of Europe and a handful of other countries around the world have already made the time zone shift as of this recording. Um, but when it turns out that the person is based in Arizona, Arizona is, I believe, the one state in the United States that does not observe daylight savings time. So they are basically, they don't move. And I really cannot wait for the day that all of us in the United States and maybe the whole world within my lifetime, oh my gosh, what a treat if we got rid of daylight savings time. But I personally have learned to ask every time somebody offers something in mountain, like just ask if they're in Arizona or not. I'd say probably about 25% of the time, it is someone in Arizona, and not a single one of them has ever proactively offered up the fact that they're based in Arizona and their time zone won't be changing. Um, I yeah, again, like I just huge chip on my shoulder about daylight savings time. I don't particularly have strong feelings. I would love to be summertime. Wait, standard time and daylight time. I think I would love to be daylight time? Question mark. You can hear my thoughts on the matter in Ask an Assistant episode, looking at my spreadsheet right here, episode 10. You can hear my thoughts about daylight savings time there. And I'd always love to chat about it. So anybody have strong feelings about it, you want to sway me one way or the other about staying standard versus daylight, I'm here for it, but let's get our lobbying powers together and make that happen within my lifetime. We've got, a good 40 years to go, so fingers crossed. Um yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about time zones today, but just truly take a moment, be specific. It doesn't take that much longer to type it out. Um and just the more information the better. Like please don't ever assume that you know where somebody is based. And when you're asking for time on someone's calendar offerings, take the proactive step. Be like, hey, I'm based in Arizona. Hey, I'm based in the central time zone. Hey, I'm based in Eastern. I'm based in Europe. I'm based in this country, this time zone. Like the more information, the better for everyone involved. And like in my case, I was born and spent the first 35 years of my life living in Minnesota in the central time zone in the United States. I lived for 3 years in the Pacific time zone in San Diego, California. I have now lived in the Eastern time zone in New York, and honestly, when my husband and I moved to California, we really took to Pacific time. Like, it just works really well with our personal, biological chemical makeup, if you will. Like, I would say within 2 weeks, we were fully adjusted. We've lived in New York now for over 3 years, and I still pretty much maintain Pacific hours, even here on the East Coast. It is not something that I am working very hard to correct. All that being said, it just having all of that extra information, like, people assume that since I'm in New York, I must work Eastern hours, so I get phone calls sometimes 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern, and I'm like, "No." Or, like, when I lived in San Diego, people would just kinda guess about, where I was based, especially if I was organizing something on the East Coast. I would get those 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific phone calls. Yikes. So just be specific with people. Just tell them, do the translation. Just say, this is my time zone. You don't even have to tell me like what state or country or whatever. This is my time zone. This is what we're working with. And then you can do the math from there. Talking about names, my goodness. Please be specific when you are talking about and or with people. Especially when you work with multiple outside parties, which so many of us do. Like I work inside a company of two. We have professional services that help our business run. We have had thousands of podcast guests over all of the different podcasts that my executive has produced or been on over the years. So, people that have been guests on our shows, people whose shows that my executive has been a guest on. Like, we have thousands of contacts just from that alone. That doesn't cover all the speaking engagements he's done, all of his personal contacts, that kind of thing. Like, just there's a lot of external communication that happens when you're working inside of a business. And honest to goodness, the number of people named like John or Jennifer who have like called me and just expect me to know, oh, hey, Jess, it's John returning your call. Which John are you? Like, our accountant is named John. We have professional colleagues that we are in regular communication with named John. I have family members named John. Like, I don't necessarily like if I spend 90% of my time communicating with you via email and your phone number is not in your email signature, my phone is not going to tell me who you are if we've never spoken by phone before. Like, please, please, please just default to being humble. Tell me which John you are. Like, here's a nice little sample script. Hi, Jess. This is John Smith from TARDIS Industries. That would be a lovely way for you to introduce yourself when I answer the phone and say, hi, this is Jess. Like, that simple sentence jogs my memory and immediately tells me who you are, what you're calling about, when our last conversation may have been, where we last connected, whether that's in person, by email, by phone, and maybe I neglected to save your phone number, and why you're calling me today. Like, merely by telling me which John you are. You say John from TARDIS Industries. I know who you are. I know what this is about. Like, it helps me shift gears, like I might be deep in the midst of some kind of project and I just get a phone call that says, hey, this is John returning your call. Like, what? What if I called you like 3 weeks ago? I didn't just call you yesterday. You're just getting back to me. Like, tell me which John you are. Like, until the person answering the phone immediately answers, like, John Smith from TARDIS Industries. How the heck are you today? Like, please just be humble, reintroduce yourself. It's a huge professional courtesy. It really helps the person on the receiving end, often me. I make a surprising number of phone calls and leave a surprising number of voicemail messages because nobody answers their phone anymore. Um, but it helps me shift gears out of whatever it was that I was doing and feel fully prepared to be in the moment and have the phone call, or even to say, John from TARDIS Industries, give me a moment. Let me get back to my laptop and pull up our last chain of communication. Um, excuse me. It's nothing personal when I don't know you by voice or by phone number. But little interactions like that where you are helpful and humble help me get to know you better and like want to save your number and look forward to our next call, or maybe even like text you like, hey, John from TARDIS Industries, I saw you at Covent Garden the other day. So sorry that I missed your phone box and neglected to jump in. Hope to catch you next time. Anyway, another fun one for all of you out there listening is for the card party events my executive and I put on. We work with a team of about 10 people, and that team of 10 people has a core team of, I want to say, like 7 people who are on the regular, several times a month calls for event preparation. Of that team of like 7 people that meet on the regular, we have 2 Dans and 2 Jesses. Nobody goes by Daniel and nobody goes by Jessica. Like, a friend of mine recently, when I was telling her about it, she was like, what a missed opportunity to not go by your middle name. Like, you could have been Val or Valentine this whole time. And I'm just like, "Ugh, come on, I could have been." But this is the real kicker, is that both Jesses, so Jess, me, and the other Jess on the team, we both have the same birthday. We just found out. We were scheduling out a year's worth of calls, and I was just like, you know what? I don't work on my birthday, so let's skip that one. And the person I was working with was just like, you're kidding. That's your birthday? And I was like, yeah, why? And he's like, that's Jess A's birthday too. And then Jess A texted me afterward and she was just like, you've got to be kidding. I was so excited to see that I wasn't going to have any calls on my birthday. And I was like, what are the freaking odds? Like, a team of 10 total people, 7 people who meet regularly, 2 Jesses, 2 Dans, and the 2 Jesses have the same birthday. Absolutely wild. But we really have to be careful on those regular calls. We always go by Jess A or Jess L. I am Jess L. We have Dan N and Dan F, or as my executive often calls us, Jess and or Dan on my, meaning his team. So he'll just be like, my Jess, my Dan, Dan on my team, Jess on my team. But the one nice thing is that we do pretty different things. So like if we're talking about, I don't know, creators, like we know that Jess A handles that. But it does get a little confusing via email sometimes, and it does get a little confusing during calls. So, somebody might say, hey, Jess, blah, blah, blah. And then they have to say, oh, Jess A or oh, Jess L. But just be specific. It's so helpful. And then winding around to the third item on today's list, the first Thursday. Do you feel that it is the actual first Thursday of any given month? Or is it the Thursday contained within the first full week of any given month? It makes a huge difference and will absolutely generate confusion and questions no matter how you set this up. This one came to my attention just yesterday. I had given the person that I'm coordinating with a list of dates that I had added to my executive's calendar. Like I said, I'm already scheduled a year. I'm truly scheduled through like December of next year for a lot of things already. So 14 months out into the future. I'd given them a list of dates that had been reviewed, vetted, okayed, approved by the person that I'm coordinating with. And we only figured it out today because they had asked me if we could use May 1st as a makeup date for a date that my executive is going to be out of town. They were thinking in their head that May 1st was technically part of the last week of April. But I had previously cleared May 1st as a scheduled date where there was already a regular session. So like there was some confusion there. And then we had also previously discussed months where there were 5 weeks with a Thursday in any given month. And if we were going with week 1 starting on the Monday of a full week, January goes from having 5 Thursdays to 4, and April goes from having 4 Thursdays to 3. So, if you're trying to schedule something like the first and third or second and fourth week of any given month, figuring out what you actually mean by what constitutes the first week or the first given weekday of any month, like that's something that you have to be really specific about. And no matter, again, how you slice it, like if it's an internal thing, hopefully it's not that many people. But if it's an external thing, like if you potentially have hundreds of people involved where you say, okay, first and third Thursday, second and fourth Thursday for this other thing, figuring out what you mean by week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4 is super important. Yeah, so basically, like, we had to re-review everything. I was just like, "Okay, let's talk this out real quick because I don't want to go week by week." I don't wanna go through 52 weeks of calls to figure out that I'm right about some and wrong about others. Like, I'd rather make a call right now. Like, what constitutes week 1 of any given month? And I'm so, so, so grateful that we figured this out now, like, in October, instead of running into it in like sometime in 2025 when it's in the moment and we're just like, okay, where's the executive? He's not here. Um, really glad that we're figuring this out now. What, 8 weeks out until the end of 2024? My goodness. But yeah, huge, huge lesson learned in the moment for the future for sure. I will definitely be a lot more cautious after this one about like, what do you mean by first Thursday, second Thursday, third Thursday, fourth Thursday? Like what does that actually mean when we are scheduling this? Because again, the more information, the better. Be as specific as you can. Some people might take it as overkill. They might take it as too much information, but I would rather be over prepared in a situation like this and consider all potential areas for confusion than under prepared and caught in a situation where my executive is not where he needs to be when he needs to be there with all of the information that he needs. So, yeah, just be super specific with your time zones, be specific with names, and be specific when you are scheduling regularly recurring meetings. Be specific, truly. Just those are the three that I'm talking about today because those are the three that have just been top of mind for me lately. They're all things that have a lovely blend of personal life and professional life mixed in with them. So yeah, just take those lessons, apply them where they make sense, take them and implement them, and let me know about the things that you run into that need more specificity in this world. I would love to hear from you as always. askanassistant.com. Lay your comments, questions, thoughts, and concerns on me. And until next week, take care.